For all panelists, we have a question for one fun fact about maps from each of you to warm you up. Yossef, do you want to start? A fun fact. No pressure. If anyone
south at the top. Perhaps this is
south at the top is
south at the top. There's no. It's not necessary that north would be at the top. And most of the world maps of the Islamic world have south at the top. But this is even that is not standardized on any regional or sectional maps. And there's a new book by Jerry Broughton. I'm doing advertisement on cardinal direction. So I think this is quite interesting in the way we. I didn't mean to get a commission here, but yeah, I think this is one of the things that actually it's yeah.
Okay, fun facts about maps. What I like and what always gets me excited about maps is what the maps don't show. And if you can compare two maps, one which shows information alongside one which doesn't show information. I'm going to move far more modern period now. I'm going to go very late 20th century and thinking maybe Soviet topographic maps of Britain showing military sites and put that alongside an Ordnance Survey map, and the Ordnance Survey map will be white and blank, and the Soviet map will show you everything you need to know. So that's my fun fact.
I think my fun fact is that maps aren't flat. So you see it on the screen and you think, okay, this is a flat projection of the Earth. And I think all presentations today showed that they're not. And that's nice because we start to dive into that, and that gives us a lot more information. So we're looking really with new eyes to these objects. And I feel that we have put an extra layer on this already complex archive of information. So in a way, we make our life even worse.
We're so spoiled in the Bodleian. We've got just the most beautiful maps here. And I love the fact that maps are not just functional, they are decorative and they're incredibly beautiful. So the Francis Strauss manuscripts atlas that I showed is decorated with gold leaf. There's beautiful animals, illustrations. They really are wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Now the harder questions, I expect. Here we go. Let me see if I can. It has been said by several speakers how maps are somehow subjective and representative of the point of view of the creator. New technologies are often accused of similar biases. How can we ensure that joining the old and the new won't increase these biases and subjectiveness? Take that one.
I don't know whether we can. We can't say for sure. A lot of what we've seen today is new information or new technology, and it's how we as map users, map consumers, people studying the maps, how we deal with this new information and try and unpackage it. And I'm guessing to a certain extent, most of us are already where we have these inbuilt biases and the way we deal with maps. And they're probably there, hidden away when we look at something and think, well, why is that there? It's there because of reason A, because of reason B. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to try and break away from this kind of thinking. How to release yourself from the shackles of a lifetime of training. It's a great challenge. So that question in itself was a really good one to ask. What I've just said isn't the definitive answer at all, but it certainly got me thinking. So I'm going to leave it open-ended.
No, well, I think this was an excellent answer to this question, because this bias is there and it won't go away. Even, when we speak about the object and when we speak about the technology, But the start is to be aware of it and to be transparent of it and to have multiple voices in the discussion. So I think that's also something that I really like about my work is when you collaborate with technicians, with heritage professionals, with scholars, and you're in dialogue with each other, then you can address these kind of questions. And maybe you don't have the solution, but the fact that you're speaking about it already transforms the way that we are looking to these objects. So if I had to add something to it, then it would be also to include these different perspectives in the.
I think what's come through very strongly in all of your presentations was that very creative partnership between researchers, technologists, curators. It really came through very strongly. I mean, I think what you were saying, Yossef, about an analog historian coming to something and asking, what could technology do with this? I mean, in a way, that sort of gets around the biases question because you're trying to do things in a different way.
I agree that biases will remain. This is what maps do. They are interpretation of reality. Bo has talked about the map that represents everything, and that's not a map. That's just existence. So this is it. But I agree that this question really opens up what other levels of biases we're introducing by using specific techniques. So are we asking is the technology always asking the right questions? What kind of agendas do we have? And I think it's important to think of what is driven but what we can do, and what is driven but what we need to know.
Archaeops is as much a collaboration with Factum Foundation in the technology in the Bodleian as it is with researchers. So a lot of my time is spent working with researchers, making renders, and you can make 100 different renders of a recording. Each will show something new, and to be guided by the experts is really important for me. I can make the recordings, that's very easy, but if that data isn't conveying what it needs to convey, then the recording is useless. So it is about a negotiation.
You, Sanne, about what the general audience can learn from your beautiful 3D research, and can people use all these scans and facsimiles that you've been producing?
Well, not yet, but they can, because one of the nicest things that happened last year was that the Dutch government could send in a 3D object for the European Twin-It campaign. So that's a campaign of Europeana to improve accessibility of 3D models. And we could have sent in a Vermeer painting, but we did not. We sent in the globe, the ugly globe. And I think that's important because it shows the true value of these techniques. And I think it's important to when you are starting to digitize, to have this research question, and we have scarce means of doing so. So we should not do everything, but just the things that we think, okay, there's a specific need for conservation, for research, for the general public. And then the next step is to let the public look at the objects, but I would even go one step further. If we take in consideration the Faro agreement, which says the public is the owner of the objects, it's public ownership, then we should also think about ways where people can load these 3D models with their own stories, with their own insights, and we are not there yet. But I think it would be wonderful if we can also enhance the dialogue. And the Globe is an excellent example of that because it's linked to Dutch colonialism. So it's a story that is important for the museum. So we'll be working on that. Yeah.
Thank you. You pointed out the cartouches in Scotland, which show evidence of both pinhole pricking and scoring. Do you think the scoring was also evidence of a copying process, or rather a later step?
I think the scoring was a very early step because there's no evidence, as far as we've found yet, for scoring south of Hadrian's Wall. So the cartouches that we see, there are very few of them south of the wall. There are a few English counties have much smaller little bounding boxes, and we've not really studied those, but I don't think there's any great evidence. But the Scottish ones are interesting because they're so dominant in the landscape, because there's so little geography portrayed in Scotland compared to England and Wales. So if you bear in mind that at the time the map was made, Scotland was a foreign country, and so there's not that huge amount of geographical knowledge north of the border. And so you can see that, and there were very regular scoring marks on those cartouches. In terms of how there aren't that many cartouches there anyway, and some of them have been altered, but the scoring marks are reasonably consistent from how I remember. So I don't think there's any additional scoring evidence in terms of those bounding boxes anywhere else on the map.
John, what is the role of computer graphics technologies for recording and documenting?
Role.
What is the role?
I mean, there are lots. Obviously, if we can find out new information, that's wonderful. The Selenium is an amazing machine because it can record both in color and the 3D simultaneously. And we can use that data to measure, like I showed, so you can draw a profile over a given area. That might give us information about, for instance, the pinhole data in the Goth map. We could do the same thing for a copper printing plate. We could measure the depth of the lines. And this all helps possibly with attribution. You may even be able to say, well, this tool mark in this manuscript is made in this annotation as well, and therefore you can link those two annotations to the same individual. So there's all manner of different applications, and also facsimile as well for creating physical facsimiles, and also condition reports for our team in conservation.
And the final question that I have is for everyone, and these are always the hardest ones. Why maps? What drew you to this area of study? So, Yossef, what was your origin story for being interested in maps?
The origin story is that I was involved in the project to edit including the conservation of the Book of Curiosities, the Fatimid cosmography, 11th century Arabic cosmography that was discovered actually by Professor Emily Savage-Smith, who's sitting here in the year 2000. So this is, it just happened to be the job at the time that I was offered. But I think, maps tell us the way.
Thank you. Nick?
Mine's very easy. It goes back to when I was a small child, and I remember waking up one morning and going downstairs and finding an atlas on the floor of the living room. I wasn't sure what it was, and it was the Reader's Digest Atlas of the World. I opened up the first couple of pages, and then there was this riot of colour, which was a physical map of Central Africa. Lots of very vibrant greens, and the further north you got, moving into orange for the desert, the southern Sahara. And I was just blown away by this as a design concept and the colours. And that was it. I was hooked. And I remember it as if it was yesterday, and I was tiny. Very easy question to answer that.
Well, like I already said, I have a preference for ugly objects. And that comes, I'm trained as a medievalist, and I specialize in medieval tombs, and they are often also not in a very good state. And so if something is ugly and broken, then I think, let's go, because those are the objects that often tell the most interesting stories. And in this case, what particularly got to me was the journey. So you have this map, but you also have a very personal memento of a story in someone's life. And that's always the kind of history that pulls me most.
But I'm completely convinced by the argument that we should be digitizing more of the less obviously beautiful, because I think my team are responsible for digital Bodleian. And, we do want to digitize the things, a colleague in medieval studies referred to them as the boring books, the ones that aren't immediately, and not the
Yeah.
beautiful illuminated things, but because it is the story, and it is quite hard to sort of. You've all done it beautifully, telling the stories of these objects, but it can be quite hard to get that across. I think these digital technologies help enormously in that.
Absolutely, and there's so much more beneath the surface also of these boring books, and most of the time when something is broken or ugly, not many people have looked at it. So
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
also a lot to discover there.
Absolutely. You're not a map
Well,
specialist.
that's the
but
thing.
what-
Yeah, in a room full of map lovers, it might be controversial, but I'll record anything. I don't discriminate.
Quite right. Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the questions. As I mentioned earlier, we've only got a handful on the cards, but we will be answering the questions online on the Oculi Monday website. So please do check. If we haven't answered your question, do check in afterwards. So we're going to take a break for about half an hour. I do encourage those of you who are in the room to go and have a look at that Goff map facsimile that Nick was referencing. It is amazing. And you'll be able to talk to all of our panelists. I'm sure he'll be very willing to talk to you all about their work. But please do join me in thanking them for a really fantastic set of presentations and discussions. So thank you.